The mirror was a witness to two very different Christinas. In 2003, it reflected a girl crowned Miss Irresistible, a symbol of high school triumph. In 2005, it reflected a hollow-eyed fugitive hiding in a San Antonio hotel room. The story of Christine Paolilla is the ultimate Cinderella story gone wrong. A journey that began with a wig and a makeover and ended with a pistol and a life sentence. The mirror was never a friend to Christine. In the harsh, fluorescent lighting of the high school bathroom, she stared at a reflection that felt like a cruel joke. To the world, she was the girl in the ill-fitting wig, the girl whose eyelashes and eyebrows were missing, victims of a condition called alopecia. But to the teenagers at Clear Lake High School, she wasn't a medical case. She was a target. The bullying didn't always come in shouts. Often, it was the suffocating silence that followed her down the hallway, or the muffled snickers when she adjusted her hairpiece. Christine had learned to make herself small. She wore her insecurity like a heavy coat, rounding her shoulders and keeping her eyes fixed on the scuffed linoleum floors. Her goal was simple, to be invisible. Yet, the deep flaw in Christine's soul wasn't her lack of hair. It was her desperate, aching hunger for the very thing that terrified her, attention. She didn't just want to fit in, she wanted to be adored. Behind the shy exterior lay a volatile mix of resentment and longing. Every time a popular girl laughed in the distance, Christine felt a pang of envy so sharp it tasted like copper. She imagined what it would be like to walk through those glass doors and feel the air shift, to have people look at her with admiration rather than pity. This was her ordinary world, a landscape of social isolation and silent prayers for a miracle. The miracle arrived in the form of two girls who seemed to step out of a magazine, Rachel and Tiffany. They were the suns around which the school's social galaxy revolved. They were beautiful, confident, and, for reasons Christine couldn't yet fathom, they were kind. One afternoon, the barrier between the invisibles and the elites shattered. Rachel and Tiffany didn't just offer a polite smile, they offered a hand. They saw the girl behind the wig and decided to make her a project. The transformation of Christine was not merely cosmetic. It was a systematic dismantling of the girl she used to be. Rachel and Tiffany took her under their wings like seasoned mentors, turning their bedrooms into laboratories of beauty. "We're going to fix the wig first," Tiffany had said, her voice filled with the casual authority of someone who had never known a bad hair day. They spent hours teaching Christine how to apply makeup to mimic the eyebrows she didn't have, how to contour a face that had previously been hidden behind a veil of shame, and how to dress in a way that commanded eyes rather than avoided them. As the layers of the invisible girl were peeled away, a new Christine emerged. She was stunning. With the right hair, the right clothes, and the right friends, she was no longer the girl people whispered about. She was the girl people wanted to be near. She was voted Miss Irresistible by her peers, a title that felt like a victory over every bully who had ever made her cry. But the makeover went deeper than the skin. Christine began to mirror the girls who saved her. She adopted their slang, their walks, and their social circles. For a while, the three were inseparable. Rachel and Tiffany were more than friends. They were her architects. They had built a version of Christine that could survive the social jungle of Houston suburbs. However, beneath the polished exterior, the old insecurities remained. Christine's need for validation had become an addiction. She was terrified that if she slipped up, if the wig shifted or the makeup smeared, the world would realize she was still the broken girl from the bathroom mirror. The high of being Miss Irresistible was fleeting. By the time Christine graduated, the novelty of her makeover had begun to sour into a familiar, gnawing anxiety. The popular world of Rachel and Tiffany was built on sunshine and social status, but Christine had a darkness in her that those girls couldn't reach. She found the bridge to that darkness when she met Christopher. Christopher was everything the Clear Lake crowd was not. He was older, grizzled by a criminal record, and wore his rebellion like a second skin. He didn't care about beauty pageants or social hierarchies. He cared about the immediate, visceral thrill of the next high. For Christine, Christopher wasn't a warning sign. He was an anchor. In her warped perception, his bad boy persona made her feel protected. If she was with him, no one would ever dare bully her again. Their relationship was a chemical reaction. Christopher introduced Christine to a world of hard drugs, primarily heroin and prescription pills. The girl who once obsessed over the placement of her wig now sat in dimly lit rooms, watching the world blur through a narcotic haze. Christopher became her primary source of validation, replacing Rachel and Tiffany. He didn't demand she look perfect. He only demanded she stay loyal to the habit. As the drugs took hold, Christine's personality fractured. The empathy she once had began to erode, replaced by a desperate, twitchy need for the next fix. By the summer of 2003, the money had evaporated. The glamorous life Christine had briefly inhabited was a distant memory, replaced by the crushing weight of withdrawal. Christopher's criminal record made steady work impossible, and Christine's own habit was beginning to interfere with her ability to function. They were living in a vacuum of desperation, and in that vacuum, a horrific plan began to take shape. "Tiffany has it," Christopher would whisper, planting the seeds of resentment. He knew that Tiffany's boyfriend was a drug dealer. In his mind, Tiffany and Rachel weren't friends. They were targets. They had the money, the drugs, and the easy life that Christine and Christopher lacked. The flaw in Christine's character, her need to belong, morphed into a dangerous entitlement. She began to view her former friend's success as an insult to her own suffering. Then, on July 18, 2003, the heat in Houston was stifling, mirrored by the tension in the small apartment Christine and Christopher shared. They didn't just need money, they needed a score. The plan was simple, a robbery. They believed Tiffany's house would be an easy mark. Christine, the girl they had dressed up and loved, would be the Trojan horse that got them through the front door. The air in Tiffany's house was cool, a sharp contrast to the humid afternoon outside. When Christine and Christopher arrived, they weren't met with suspicion, but with the casual warmth of old friends. Rachel was there, too. They were hanging out, for young people with their whole lives ahead of them. The shift happened in a heartbeat. Christopher pulled a semi-automatic pistol, his eyes cold and focused. But the true horror wasn't Christopher, it was Christine. She didn't scream or run. Instead, she drew her own weapon. The Miss Irresistible mask didn't just slip, it shattered. The robbery quickly dissolved into a slaughter. Christopher fired first, striking the two young men in the room. Then, the focus turned to the girls. Christine stood before the very people who had given her a life, and she pulled the trigger. The sounds of the shots were deafening in the small space, followed by a silence more terrifying than the noise. After the initial burst of violence, they ransacked the house for drugs. But for Christine, the brutality wasn't over. Noticing that Rachel was still breathing, still clinging to a life that Christine had decided she no longer deserved, Christine went back. She didn't use a bullet this time. She used the butt of her gun, pistol whipping her friend with a primal, drug-fueled rage until the breathing stopped. Less than an hour after the floors of Tiffany's house had been stained red, Christine walked into a Walgreens. She smoothed her hair, checked her reflection in the glass door, and clocked in for her shift. The psychological disconnect was total. She handled money, spoke to customers, and moved through the aisles with the ghostly efficiency of a person who had ceased to exist. To the outside world, she was just a tired teenager working a summer job. Inside, she was a mass murderer. This chapter of her life became a performance. She watched the news reports of the Clear Lake murders with a feigned shock that mimicked the rest of the community. She even attended the funerals, standing among the mourners, shedding crocodile tears for the girls she had personally executed. The audacity of her presence at the memorials was a testament to how far she had drifted from reality. She believed that if she could just keep the mask on tight enough, the blood would never soak through. The case went cold for 3 years. The Clear Lake murders haunted the Houston area, a mystery with no leads and no suspects. During this time, Christine's life with Christopher disintegrated. Their shared trauma didn't bond them, it poisoned them. They eventually split, and Christine found herself back in the one place she couldn't hide: rehab. In the quiet, clinical halls of a treatment center, the silence became too loud. It was here she met a girl who offered her a genuine, judgment-free friendship. Perhaps it was the guilt, or perhaps it was her old need to be seen. But Christine did the unthinkable. She confessed. She told her new friend about the night in Clear Lake, about the guns, and about the girls who died. At the same time, she met Justin. He saw a vulnerable woman recovering from addiction, not a killer. They fell in love, and in 2005, they married. Christine was trying to build a new identity on top of a graveyard. The illusion broke in 2005 when a Crime Stoppers segment aired on television. Two police sketches flashed across the screen, suspects in the Clear Lake murders. One of them bore a haunting resemblance to the woman Justin had married. Panic seized Christine. She confessed to Justin, not out of remorse, but out of a desperate need for a protector. They fled. They ended up in a low-rent hotel in San Antonio, Texas, where the walls seemed to close in more every day. For 7 months, they lived in a drug-induced haze, rarely leaving the room. Christine spent her days staring at the door, waiting for the handle to turn. Every siren in the distance was a herald of her doom. She was no longer Miss Irresistible or a newlywed. She was a cornered animal. The drugs were the only thing that kept the faces of Rachel and Tiffany from appearing in the shadows of the hotel room. The end came not with a bang, but with a knock. The friend from rehab had finally gone to the police. Using ATM withdrawals to track her, investigators closed in on the San Antonio hotel. When they broke down the door, they found a woman who looked decades older than her 20 years, surrounded by the debris of addiction. As Christine was led away in handcuffs, the news reached Christopher. He chose his own ending, committing suicide before he could be brought to justice. Christine, however, was forced to face the world she had tried so hard to impress. The trial was a spectacle of betrayal. The images of the Miss Irresistible makeover were played alongside the crime scene photos, a jarring visual of the transformation from victim to predator. In 2008, Christine was sentenced to life in prison. She began her story wanting to be seen, wanting to be beautiful, and wanting to belong. She ended it in a state-issued jumpsuit, a number in a system, finally and truly invisible, not because of her hair, but because of the soul she had traded away in a house in Clear Lake.